"I'm sorry, sir, this section is reserved." He didn't look up right away. He was turning a water glass, a slow quarter turn on the white linen, and when he finally looked at her, his eyes were the particular grey of early morning, before the sky decides what colour the day will be. "I know," he said. "I reserved it." Arabella Trent had been managing events at the Pinnacle for 2 years. She had guided 600 guests through a rooftop wedding in a windstorm. She had talked a groom down from a ledge, the metaphorical kind, with 15 minutes to ceremony. She had handled every flavour of difficult that money could produce, and she had done it without losing the particular still quality that Mr. Ingram called her best professional asset and she called survival. She was not prepared for this. Rewind 22 minutes, to the moment her earpiece crackled and Mr. Ingram's voice came through, lower than usual, with a flatness that meant something had already gone sideways. "East Terrace corner. The Fairfax reservation, he's there." The Fairfax reservation was the most unusual booking the Pinnacle had taken since Arabella joined the staff. A full evening buyout of the East Terrace corner, a four-top with the best unobstructed view of Lake Michigan. Paid in advance, no guest name attached, with a handwritten coordinate that the assigned was not to be changed under any circumstances. The assigned coordinator was Arabella. Mr. Ingram had not told her why. She'd assumed a proposal, a reconciliation, some species of grand gesture that required privacy and a 52-story view. Instead, one man alone in a charcoal suit with no tie and a collar open at the throat, sitting at a four-top set for one and watching the lake the way a man watches something he doesn't fully trust. He was younger than she'd built from advance booking and cash transfer, and the instruction typed on Fairfax development letterhead, she'd pictured someone silver-haired and impatient. This man was perhaps 40, dark hair pushed back by a hand that had been through it recently. There was a tiredness in him that sat below the surface, in the set of his jaw and the stillness he wore like a coat. She crossed the terrace in the October dark. The city spread 40 floors below the glass rail, the wind off the lake carrying something that smelled like the last of summer giving up. And she said it because it was her job. "I'm sorry, sir, this section is reserved." He said, "I know, I reserved it." "For your party?" she said, still hoping for a version that made sense. He shook his head. "For you." Arabella had been still before. She was still now in a different way, the way a person goes still when the ground rearranges itself without warning. "I don't understand," she said. "I know." He turned the glass again, set it down, looked at her directly, which she noticed because most people looked at coordinators the way they looked at furniture. Useful, background, incidental. "I'm Sebastian Fairfax. I own the building you're standing on, which I mention only so you know. I'm not in the habit of reserving tables for the wrong reasons." A pause. "Can I ask you to sit? I'll explain everything. And if at the end of it, you want to walk back inside and pretend this was a very strange misdirected booking, I'll sign whatever you need and never trouble you again." The wind moved off the lake. The candle flame bent toward him. She sat on the edge of the chair, clipboard still across her lap, ready to rise. "You have 5 minutes," she said. Something crossed his face that wasn't quite a smile. "I'll need 8. I've been rehearsing for 6 months, and I still haven't gotten it under 10. 6 months ago, Sebastian Fairfax said, his father had a cardiac event in the parking structure beneath the Meridian Grand. Cornelius Fairfax, 74 years old, stubborn as a load-bearing wall. His son's phrase, offered without apology, had sent his driver home because he despised being managed and had decided the 3-block walk to the car was reasonable for a man with a pacemaker to do alone in November rain. He'd made it as far as the 2nd level before his heart lost the thread. 41 people walked past him, Sebastian said. "I have the security footage. I've watched it more times than I should have. 41 people who decided he was someone else's problem." She was very still now, not the chair edge kind of still, the old kind. "The 42nd, he continued, not looking at her now, looking at the water, was a woman in a camel coat who came off the elevator with a laptop bag and a coffee cup and stopped. She put the coffee down, and she knelt. She kept him talking, asked his name, his wife's name, whether he knew what day it was. She found a folded transit map in her bag and tucked it under his head because the concrete was cold. He paused. She called 911 and told them his age, that he had a pacemaker, that his color had changed, that he'd been on the ground approximately 4 minutes. Clean and fast, like someone who had done it before. Who knew which facts saved time and which ones waste it? Arabella said nothing. The wind did nothing useful. And then the paramedics came. and there was a moment of movement, and when my father looked for her to say thank you, she was gone. She left the transit map behind. His jaw worked. He wouldn't let anyone take it. He's been keeping it on the table beside his chair for 6 months, and his housekeeper has threatened to quit over it twice. That doesn't explain, Arabella said carefully. How you know my name? No, he said, it doesn't. He'd had very little to go on. A camel coat. 11 seconds of garage footage from the wrong angle, showing the back of a woman's head and the bright yellow cover of a transit map. He'd hired people. He'd reached a thorough dead end. 3 weeks ago, on a call with the Meridian Grand's general manager about a lobby renovation, the manager had mentioned, in the way people mention things to men who own the building, that his most reliable events coordinator had come to hospitality from structural engineering. Quietly, without explanation. I asked him if she carried a transit map, Sebastian said. He said he didn't know, but that she kept one in her desk drawer and consulted it for vendor logistics. He looked up, and I asked him her name. The city burned below them. Arabella's hands were flat on the clipboard. And here you are, she said. And here I am, he agreed, having reserved a table for the person I've been trying to find for 6 months. I know how this looks. A man who owns the building and knows your name before you've said it. Which is why I went through Mr. Ingram, and why he made his own inquiries about me first, and why he's the reason I'm sitting here instead of writing a company letter that would have gone straight into your recycling. She thought about Mr. Ingram, about the particular careful expression he'd worn when he assigned her this booking 6 weeks ago. What do you want? She said. To say thank you. Simply, no performance. My father is at home tonight arguing with his cardiologist about red meat. He is alive, specifically because a stranger with a transit map stayed on a cold garage floor for 11 minutes instead of walking past. I know you didn't do it for gratitude. That's the whole reason it has to be said. She looked at the lake. She looked back at him. You're welcome, she said, and started to rise. One more thing, and then you can go. She stopped, settled back, not warmly. My firm has a fellowship program, Sebastian said, for structural engineers, early career transition, people who stepped away and are thinking about stepping back. Each word chosen, she could tell, measured for weight. I know you left engineering. I don't know why. That's your business. But I run a company that builds things. And I spent 6 months looking for the woman who assessed my father's condition in 45 seconds with the precision of someone who understands exactly what happens when the right information reaches the right people at the right moment. He looked at her steadily. I cannot unknow that that person is currently coordinating centerpieces. The wind off the lake moved between them. That's not charity, he said, before she could answer. It's a professional conversation. 1. Any day this week. If you listen and it's not for you, we shake hands, and that's the end of it. I'll think about it, she said, which was not yes, which was not the no she'd intended to say. He nodded. Then he reached into his jacket and set something on the table, yellow and soft with handling, folded into a careful square. Her transit map, 6 months of someone else's keeping. He wanted you to have it back, Sebastian said, or he wanted to give it to you himself. He made me write both sentences down and bring them separately so I could decide in the moment. She almost smiled. She didn't let it finish. Thank you, she said, and tucked the map into her jacket pocket, where it lay warm against her side. Tamara was behind the bar when Arabella came back inside, exercising what was clearly heroic restraint. That man, Tamara said, has been at that table for 90 minutes. I know. He ordered water and has been watching the door like it owed him an explanation. I know. Arabella. Tamara leaned across the bar. That is Sebastian Fairfax. 3 buildings within 4 blocks have his family's name on the lobby. I know, Arabella said, and went back to work. She held out 4 days. On the 5th, she went to the Fairfax development offices, not because Sebastian had persuaded her, but because Cornelius Fairfax had sent a note, 1 handwritten line on a plain card. I am 74 years old and I kept your map on my table for 6 months. The least you can do is have coffee with me. She laughed at it alone in her apartment, and then felt something loosen in her chest that she hadn't known was clenched. Cornelius was smaller than she'd expected. Sharp eyes, silver hair, the unhurried manner of a man who had stopped trying to impress anyone around his 55th birthday and found the freedom of it enormous. He met her in the lobby and immediately declared it unsuitable and took her to a coffee shop 2 blocks east where the coffee was unremarkable, and his corner booth had clearly been his for years. You're younger than I pictured, he said, settling across from her. People keep saying that about each other in this situation, Arabella said. He looked at her sharply, then he smiled, wide and sudden, the kind a man produces when something genuinely catches him off guard. Sebastian said you were funny. He said it like it had inconvenienced him considerably. How does he handle inconvenience? Terribly. He's been running a company since 31, which means 8 years of being the person in the room who decides things, and he's forgotten what it feels like to have a situation he can't manage. Cornelius wrapped both hands around his cup. You're a situation he can't manage. I find it extraordinarily refreshing. She sat with him an hour. He didn't ask about the parking garage or the transit map or engineering. He talked about the city, how it looks from different altitudes, which he knew well. He asked how she'd ended up at the Pinnacle. She said, "The right job at the right moment." He nodded without pressing, in the manner of a man who understood that some answers have flaws that shouldn't be tested. When Sebastian arrived, jacket off, sleeves rolled, the look of someone whose meeting had run long and been difficult, he recalibrated when he saw her, the hard-edged version of him adjusting for a different register. "You came," he said. "Your father guilted me with a handwritten note. Don't look so relieved. I haven't agreed to anything." "You're here," Sebastian said. "That's further than I expected." His sister Beatrix ran the foundation tour. She was immaculate and quick and looked at Arabella the way a diagnostician examines a set of results, searching for the anomaly in an otherwise normal presentation. The fellowship program was genuine. 6 fellows, 2 years each, a mentorship structure, a portfolio of affordable housing projects. It was the kind of work Arabella had entered structural engineering to do before the path narrowed to a point and stopped. "We lost 2 fellows to competing offers last cycle," Beatrix said, pulling up a spreadsheet. "We need people who stay." Her eyes moved to Arabella. "Sebastian tells me you've been at the Pinnacle 2 years." "I like the work," Arabella said. "Do you?" Beatrix said, flat, the kind of statement that has a real question folded inside it. In the elevator down, Sebastian stood beside her. Then, "She runs a thorough operation." "I noticed." "She vetted you before you arrived. I didn't ask her to. She does it automatically for anyone who enters my professional orbit." He looked at the elevator doors. "She's protective. Sometimes in ways I'd prefer she wasn't." "It's fine," Arabella said, which was true. The vetting didn't worry her. She had been vetted before. What she noticed was the small, careful pause Beatrix had produced when Arabella mentioned the name of her former employer. The half-second of stillness before Beatrix smiled and said of course and moved on. She said yes to nothing. She went back to the Pinnacle and managed 2 events and told herself she was thinking. The past arrived on a Tuesday at 9:30 in the evening, wearing the face of someone Arabella had hoped never to see again outside of a nightmare. Sybil Remick found her in the service corridor, and Arabella's heart went cold and slow in the old way, the way it had gone during the months after she left Kellner Engineering, when the phone could ring at any hour and always sounded like consequence. "I tried calling," Sybil said. She looked tired, the particular tiredness of someone carrying something they've carried too long. "I drove from Cincinnati. I didn't know another way to do this." Arabella's hands found the cool steel of a shelving unit. "Say it quickly," she said. "The Hartley is being reinvestigated." Sybil's voice was steady only because she was making it steady. "The city inspector filed a new review last month. 3 more cracks in the Northwest Foundation. Nothing catastrophic yet. But the original structural report is in front of a professional review board again, and your name is on it." The Hartley, a mixed-use residential complex on the north side. 4 stories of affordable units completed 3 years ago by a contractor working from a design brief generated at Kellner Engineering, where Arabella had spent 5 years before the 18 months that ended everything. She had flagged the foundation bearing calculations twice, in writing, with timestamps. She had sent her concern up through proper channels and been told by the project lead, a man named Philip Nance, whose family had billed more to Kellner in 5 years than Arabella would earn in a decade, that the numbers were within acceptable variance and she should finalize the report as written. She had documented her objection, and then she had signed the revised report, because that was the job. You flagged it, you documented it, and then you followed the chain of authority, because the alternative was a 28-year-old junior engineer deciding she knew better than the principal, and a building that didn't get built for families who had nowhere else to go. The partial collapse happened 14 months after occupancy. A corner of the parking substructure, unoccupied at 3 in the morning, when the sound woke 20 families instead of killing them. The investigation named a list of contributors. Arabella's name appeared near the bottom, attached to the revised report she'd been instructed to finalize. She'd signed an NDA, accepted a settlement, left the word engineer in a place she'd been careful never to open. "The board needs your statement," Sybil said. "The original one. What you wrote before Nance overrode you. The document is in the record. The timestamps are there, but they need you to say it, in front of them." She met Arabella's eyes. "Without you, Nance walks clean. And 20 families who woke up to a building failing around them spend another year receiving letters that say the standard of care was met." The service corridor hummed its industrial note. "There's something else," Sybil said. "Quita. The tone that precedes the worst part. Someone has been calling Kellner this week, not the board, a private inquiry, asking about your project history, why you left, your last assignment before you resigned." Arabella already knew the name before Sybil said it. The Fairfax Foundation. She closed her eyes for 1 second, then opened them. "Tell me the rest." The Hartley had been built on a site owned by a Fairfax subsidiary. The project had moved through expedited permits via city council contact who had since retired. The Fairfax name was not on the engineering chain. They were the developer, not the design firm, but their money had driven the timeline, and the timeline had driven the decisions Philip Nance had made about variance and acceptable risk. And Beatrix Fairfax had spent this week making calls, methodically, the way a very good operator locates a problem before it locates them. "She has your name," Sybil said. "She has Kellner. She has the settlement. She doesn't have the timestamps, but she's looking. And whatever she finds, she's going to take to the people she's protecting." To Sebastian, who didn't know, who had spent 6 months searching for Arabella for reasons that were genuine and clean, and had nothing to do with any of this. Arabella sat with it for 40 minutes. Then she went to the lobby of the Meridian Grand, stood under the ceiling lights, and called the number Sebastian had left with Mr. Ingram. He answered on the second ring. "I need to tell you something," she said, "and I need you to let me finish before you say anything, because if I stop, I'll talk myself out of it." A pause. The quality of the pause was a man going still. "All right." She walked the lobby and talked. The night concierge kept his eyes forward. She told Sebastian about Kellner Engineering, about the Hartley, about a foundation calculation she'd flagged twice in writing, and a report she'd been told to finalize anyway, about a partial collapse and 20 families, and a settlement that had traded her license for the right to disappear. She told him about Beatrix's calls to Kellner this week. And then, "Your family's subsidiary owned the Hartley site. I don't know if you knew that. I don't think it changes the engineering chain. But it means the foundation your sister has spent 11 years building is connected, even distantly, to the project where I was told to sign something I had already objected to in writing." Her voice thinned at the edges, one hairline crack. "Beatrix is going to bring you whatever she found. She's going to bring it carefully, because she is careful about everything, and every fact she gives you will be accurate, and the shape of the whole thing will be completely wrong." And I could not. She stopped, pushed through it. "I could not let you hear that version without hearing mine first, whatever that costs me." Silence on the line, not empty, held. "Where are you standing?" Sebastian said. His voice had changed, banked, rough at the edges, the voice of a man holding something he is afraid of dropping. "Right now." "Your lobby." "Don't move a breath. Don't disappear. Give me 4 minutes." She stood under the lobby lights and watched the elevator numbers descend. She thought, this is the last moment before all of it changes. The last second it belongs only to me. She didn't move. He came through the elevator in the same clothes from earlier, jacket in his hand, looking like a man who had taken part of the stairs. He stopped a careful distance away. "I heard every word," he said. "I didn't interrupt." "What did you want to say?" "That I believe you." He said it directly. "Not the settlement version. Yours. The one that's ugly and out of order and has timestamps." He pressed his mouth together. "The subsidiary. I know the site. I sold it 3 years ago to an equity group. I didn't know Kellner was the design firm. I didn't know about the timeline pressure until just now." He looked at her. "But I know what that kind of pressure does to the people inside it. I've been building things for 8 years. I know exactly what it looks like when someone documents their objection and gets overridden by the name that matters more." Arabella's hands were not steady. She let them not be. "Your sister is going to come to you with her version," she said. "I know." He didn't look away. "And I'm telling you now, when she does, you're in the room. That's not negotiable. I don't hear one side of a story about. He stopped. Something moved through his face, something he let pass without naming. About you, without you there. She looked at him for a long moment. The lobby hummed. There are 20 families, she said, who woke up to concrete failing and have been receiving the same letter every year since. And I have a review board that needs my statement in 3 weeks. She steadied herself against the weight of what she was about to say out loud, in full, for the first time. I want to give it. I've wanted to for 2 years. I've just been too afraid to want it out loud. Then that's what happens, Sebastian said simply. Beatrix arrived at 8 the next morning with a leather folio and 2 coffees, and the composed surface of a woman who had managed difficult things before most people had poured their first cup. She set the folio on the conference table, looked at Arabella sitting across from Sebastian, and did not break her expression. You've talked, she said. We have, Sebastian said. Then let me show you what I found. She opened the folio, the Kellner file, the settlement summary, Arabella's name on the final report. Read the timestamps, Arabella said. Beatrix looked at her. You have the full Kellner record. The original objection report is in there. Read what time I flagged the calculation, then read when the override was issued, then read when I finalized what I was told to finalize. In order, Beatrix. Tell me which one comes first. The office was still. Below the glass, Chicago moved through its morning. Beatrix turned pages. She read. She was quiet for a moment that had weight. The objection was filed before the override, she said slowly. 3 days before. In writing. I flagged it, I documented it. I was overridden by a man whose family had billed more to Kellner than my entire career would generate. Arabella kept her voice even. And then I signed the revised report because the alternative was watching someone else sign it instead. And at least if my name was on it, I would know exactly what was in the ground. The city moved. A gull crossed the glass, white and indifferent. Beatrix closed the folio, looked at Sebastian, then back at Arabella. I owe you an apology, she said. The words arrived unhurried, which meant they cost something. I approached this like a threat instead of a question. That was wrong. She straightened. The foundation has relationships with the city's professional review process. We've funded 3 engineering ethics programs. I can put your original objection report in front of the right board contacts before your statement date, with our name behind the request. She picked up her folio. Give me 48 hours. I'll find what the Kellner internal records actually say. She was nearly at the door. Beatrix, Arabella said. She turned. Thank you, Arabella said, for reading them in order. Something shifted in Beatrix's face. The faintest recalibration. The kind a precise instrument makes when the data requires it. She said, which appeared in her register to mean something considerable, and she left. The board took Arabella's statement on a Wednesday in a room that smelled of institutional coffee and old decisions. She read the original objection report aloud. She stated the timestamps. She set beside her account the Kellner internal communications Beatrix had obtained. 2 emails in which the project lead had explicitly acknowledged her concern and instructed her to proceed with the revised numbers, both bearing dates that preceded the foundation failure by 14 months. Philip Nance sat at the far end of the table, and for the first time since Arabella had known him, he looked like a man beginning to understand that a family name has a weight limit. Sybil testified. 2 other former Kellner engineers submitted written statements. The board's findings, issued 5 weeks later, named errors in structural assessment attributable primarily to the override of a junior engineer's documented objection by a supervising principal. Arabella's name appeared as a witness. She sat in her apartment and read the sentence twice, then a 3rd time. She called Sybil, who cried, which was startling. She called Cornelius, who said, "About time. Come to dinner Thursday. Rosa is making the thing with the leeks, and I refuse to eat it alone." She and Sebastian sat on the actual roof of the Meridian Grand. Not the Pinnacle, not the Terrace she managed, but the building's bare top, which he'd accessed with the ease of a man who owned what was beneath it. A clear November night. The city burned orange and white in every direction, and the lake was black and enormous to the east. The fellowship, he said, not asking, setting it down between them. I think so. I'd need to reapply for my license. That takes time. We're not in a hurry. He looked at the city. The Hartley remediation starts in January. Foundation work. I'm funding it through the development company, not the foundation. It's not a charitable project. It's correcting something that should have been right the first time. A pause. I'd like you involved. as a technical advisor during your licensing period, if that's something you want." She was quiet for a moment. Below, a string of taillights moved along the lakeshore, slow and patient. "Cornelius showed me the transit map when I came to dinner last Thursday," she said. "He had it framed. He put it above the table where he keeps his reading glasses." Sebastian turned to look at her. He had it framed. Rosa helped him. "It's in a very small silver frame. It's completely absurd." She felt something move in her chest, the same off-key note she'd been ignoring for weeks, the one that rang every time she was in the same room as this man. "He told me the yellow was cheerful." "It is cheerful," Sebastian said. He was facing her now, and the city spread behind him, and his expression had the quality of a man who has stopped managing a situation and started being honest about what it is. "You know I didn't engineer any of this. The rooftop table. That was deliberate. Everything after that has been consequential," she said. "I was going to say unexpected." The corner of his mouth moved, the almost smile she'd catalogued that first night without meaning to. "In a way I don't have good words for yet." "You run a development company," she said. "Don't you have architects for that?" He laughed, short and genuine, the sound of something catching him completely unprepared, and then, deliberately, he reached out and took her hand, the left one, the one that showed 2 years of careful work and one very large concession, and held it loosely, as though it was something he intended not to mishandle. "When I come back to the terrace," he said. He meant the Pinnacle, the rooftop where all of this had started. "I want to face the lake." She looked at him. "I always sit with my back to it." He looked at her steadily. "I've been told it's a significant problem." "It is a significant problem," she said. "I know." His fingers tightened gently around hers. "But I think I've been waiting for a reason to turn around." Below them, Chicago moved through its night. The lake took the city's reflection and held it, the way still water holds a light. Not keeping it exactly, just offering it back changed. Tamara said it best, the following Friday, watching through the Pinnacle's glass as 2 people stood at the east terrace rail in the November wind, both of them facing the lake. "That man," Tamara said to no one in particular, "has ordered water and looked at the view for 3 Fridays in a row. That is a completely different man from the one who used to sit with his back to every beautiful thing in this city and leave before dessert." She set down her cloth, put both hands flat on the bar. "Arabella Trent, what on earth did you do to him?" Across the room, Mr. Ingram permitted himself the quiet satisfaction of a man who had made one careful, consequential decision and had the grace not to announce it. It wasn't his to announce. It was hers. All of it was hers now. The license she was rebuilding, the foundation work she was going to help make right, the word she had kept in a closed drawer for 2 years and was only just beginning to say aloud again in full engineer. Present tense, hers alive,